A sudden and unexplained disappearance of files tied to Jeffrey Epstein has reignited scrutiny around Donald Trump, and this time, it comes with a stark warning from a former White House ethics lawyer who knows the president's legal vulnerabilities better than most. Late Saturday, alarm spread rapidly across political and legal circles after a breaking report revealed that multiple Epstein-related files had vanished from a public Justice Department webpage less than 24 hours after being released. The disappearance was not accompanied by any official explanation, public notice, or technical clarification from the government. The issue first gained traction when Kyle Griffin, executive producer at MS Now, shared details from an Associated Press report that immediately raised red flags. According to the AP, at least 16 files that had been publicly available on Friday were no longer accessible by Saturday. Among the missing materials were images described as highly sensitive, including photographs and artwork connected to Epstein's properties. One image, in particular, drew intense attention. The photograph reportedly showed a drawer containing several personal photos, among them a picture depicting Donald Trump alongside Jeffrey Epstein, Melania Trump, and Epstein's longtime associate Ghislaine Maxwell. That image, according to the report, was visible when the files were first posted, and then disappeared without explanation. The files also reportedly included images of paintings depicting nude women and photographs showing framed pictures arranged along a credenza and inside drawers. Their sudden removal prompted immediate questions about transparency, accountability, and whether political considerations played any role in the decision. What made the situation more volatile was the timing. The files were removed quickly, within a day, before journalists, watchdog groups, and members of the public had a chance to fully examine or archive the materials through official channels. The Justice Department has so far offered no public statement explaining why the files were taken down, whether the removal was temporary, or whether it was the result of an internal review, technical issue, or policy decision. That silence only intensified speculation. The development quickly caught the attention of Norm Eisen, a former White House ethics lawyer who has repeatedly challenged Trump in court and has prevailed against him in multiple legal disputes over the years. Eisen has built a reputation as one of Trump's most persistent legal adversaries, particularly on issues involving transparency, ethics, and executive accountability. Responding to the report, Eisen issued a blunt message that many interpreted as both a warning and a signal that legal scrutiny is far from over. "We downloaded everything," Eisen wrote. "Trump can run but he cannot hide." The statement suggested that copies of the files had already been preserved outside of government control, a critical detail that could complicate any effort to quietly retract or obscure the material after publication. Legal experts note that once documents are publicly released, attempts to remove them without explanation often backfire. Instead of containing controversy, such actions tend to draw greater attention, raising questions about motive and process. The renewed focus on Epstein-related records comes amid ongoing public interest in how much information remains undisclosed about Epstein's network of associates, finances, and connections to powerful figures. While Trump has denied wrongdoing and has not been charged in connection with Epstein's crimes, his past association with Epstein has remained a point of scrutiny. What remains unclear is why the files were removed, who authorized the action, and whether the Justice Department intends to repost them. The absence of transparency has left room for speculation, and for legal adversaries like Eisen to signal that independent copies may already be in circulation. For now, the unexplained disappearance has transformed what might have been a routine document release into a new flashpoint, one that raises broader concerns about public access, government accountability, and the handling of sensitive historical records. And as pressure mounts for answers, the central question becomes unavoidable. If these files were removed intentionally, what was deemed too sensitive for public view, and who made that call? As questions swirled around the sudden disappearance of the Epstein-related files, former prosecutors, transparency advocates, and legal analysts began raising deeper concerns about how the Justice Department handles politically sensitive material, especially when it intersects with figures as powerful as a sitting president. According to reporting cited by the Associated Press, the missing files were not obscure footnotes buried in a massive archive. They were part of a newly published batch of documents placed on a public-facing government webpage, intended to provide transparency around materials recovered from Epstein's properties. Their abrupt removal, without even a placeholder notice indicating review or redaction, stood out as highly unusual. In past cases involving sensitive federal records, agencies typically leave a digital marker explaining that content is temporarily unavailable due to review, legal compliance, or privacy concerns. In this instance, no such explanation appeared. This absence has fueled speculation that the files may have crossed an internal red line, not necessarily because they contained illegal material, but because of the political implications of what they depicted. One of the most striking elements in the reporting was the description of the photograph allegedly showing Donald Trump alongside Jeffrey Epstein, Melania Trump, and Ghislaine Maxwell. While Trump has publicly acknowledged knowing Epstein socially in the past, images that visually connect multiple figures in a single frame tend to carry far greater symbolic and political weight than written references. Legal experts point out that photographs often become focal points in public narratives, regardless of context. Even when no wrongdoing is alleged, imagery can drive headlines, intensify scrutiny, and shape public perception in ways that documents alone do not. That reality may help explain why the files became controversial almost immediately after being posted. Norm Eisen's reaction added another layer of gravity. Eisen is not merely a commentator, he is a veteran ethics lawyer who previously served as White House ethics czar during the Obama administration and has since been directly involved in litigation against Trump on multiple fronts. His statement that the files had already been downloaded signaled that the material may now exist beyond the government's control. In legal terms, this changes everything. Once documents enter the public domain, even briefly, attempts to retract them can raise constitutional questions related to access, transparency, and record preservation. Watchdog groups argue that retroactive removal without explanation undermines public trust and creates the appearance of selective disclosure. Several legal analysts speaking anonymously to media outlets noted that the Justice Department now faces a dilemma. Reposting the files could reignite controversy, while keeping them offline without explanation risks accusations of concealment. Meanwhile, Trump's critics have framed the incident as part of a broader pattern. Over the years, multiple Trump-related controversies have involved disputes over documents, classification, redaction, and access, from presidential records to classified materials to court filings. Supporters of the former president argue that such incidents are often exaggerated by political opponents and media figures eager to revive old narratives. They emphasize that no charges have been filed against Trump related to Epstein and that association alone does not imply wrongdoing. Still, the timing of the removal has intensified suspicion. The files disappeared quickly, before sustained media scrutiny could fully contextualize their contents. That speed has become a central point of concern. Transparency advocates warn that when government agencies remove information without explanation, the act itself becomes the story. In this case, the lack of communication has transformed a document release into a credibility crisis. As public pressure mounts, lawmakers and journalists are now asking whether internal political considerations influenced the decision, and whether similar removals have occurred before without notice. But the most unsettling question remains unanswered. If these files were deemed safe to release on Friday, what changed by Saturday, and who decided the public should no longer see them? As the controversy deepened, the silence from the Justice Department only amplified public suspicion. By Sunday evening, no formal explanation had been issued regarding why the Epstein-related files vanished, who authorized their removal, or whether they would be restored. That absence of clarity has now become a central issue in itself. Former federal officials note that institutions often underestimate how damaging silence can be in moments like this. In politically charged cases, the perception of secrecy can be as corrosive as proof of misconduct. When records disappear without warning, it invites a single unavoidable question: what is being protected, and from whom? Norm Eisen's warning that the files had already been downloaded shifted the balance of power. Once material leaves official custody and enters private hands, the government loses its ability to fully control the narrative. Legal experts say this creates a scenario where fragments of the information could surface selectively, without the broader context that an official release might provide. That possibility worries both sides of the political spectrum. For Democrats and Trump critics, the removal reinforces long-held fears that powerful figures are shielded from scrutiny. For Republicans and institutional defenders, it raises alarms about leaks, misinterpretation, and the weaponization of incomplete records. Meanwhile, Trump has not directly addressed the missing files, choosing instead to focus publicly on other issues. His allies argue that the renewed focus on Epstein is an attempt to resurrect a narrative that has never resulted in charges against him. They insist that the controversy is driven more by optics than evidence. But optics matter, especially in an election cycle already defined by mistrust in institutions. Transparency organizations are now calling for an independent explanation of the removal process. Some are demanding that Congress formally request records showing when the files were taken down, who ordered it, and whether political considerations played any role. Others argue that the episode highlights a deeper systemic problem: a lack of consistent standards for public access to sensitive historical records. Inside the Justice Department, current and former employees describe growing anxiety about how politically exposed cases are handled. Several officials, speaking off the record, warned that decisions made under pressure can have long-term consequences for the department's credibility. The Epstein case, long shrouded in secrecy, has repeatedly tested public trust. Each new document release, delay, or disappearance seems to reopen wounds rather than close them. For many Americans, the pattern reinforces a belief that transparency is conditional, extended only until it becomes inconvenient. As watchdogs and journalists continue pressing for answers, the situation remains unresolved. The files are still missing. The explanations are still absent. And the stakes are no longer limited to one set of documents. They now touch the core question of whether the public can rely on its institutions to act openly, even when doing so may prove politically uncomfortable. Because in the end, the most dangerous precedent is not what was in those files, but the idea that public records can quietly vanish without accountability.